investment. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. All right, today we're going to talk about something that has been lighting up inboxes, comment sections, private groups, investment, and yes, even some quiet banker conversations. Now, before we go any further, let me say this clearly, calmly, and responsibly. This is not financial advice, investment. I am not giving you rates. I am not giving you dates. I am not telling you to buy, sell, hold, or exchange anything. Investment. Everything we discuss here is speculative analysis based on patterns, historical precedent, banking behavior, and what many of you are reporting. Investment. You make your own financial decisions. Period. With that out of the way, let's talk about the number 486. Some of you have seen screenshots floating around. Investment. Some of you heard about a screen rate. Some of you were told that a rate popped up internally. Some of you had a banker friend who said something like, I can't talk about it, but things are moving. And here's the real question nobody is answering clearly. If 4 investment, 86 shows on a screen somewhere, does that mean cash is actually available behind it? Because those are two very different things. Let's slow this down. Investment. In banking systems, rates can appear before liquidity is fully released. That's not conspiracy, that's how systems are tested. Investment. Financial institutions use placeholder values, pile of numbers, sandbox rates, and internal shadow pricing before public release. We've seen that in currency realignments before. We've seen it in stock IPOs before. We've even seen it during emergency liquidity events. So when someone says, I saw 4, investment, 86 on a screen, the first intelligent question isn't, is it real? The first intelligent question is it live or is it staged? There's a massive difference. Investment. Let me give you a simple scenario. Imagine you work at a bank. A new currency rate is about to go active internationally. Investment. The central system pushes test data to regional banks so that internal software recognizes the change. Employees might see the number. The software might price it. Investment. But the transaction button is locked. That's called pre-positioning. It's not fake. It's not public. It's preparation. Now here's where things get interesting. Investment, we've had reports, and again, these are reports, not confirmations, that certain financial institutions have told customers, we're waiting on final authorization, not waiting on a rate, not waiting on a number, waiting on authorization. Authorization for what? Liquidity release investment. Because here's the part most people don't understand. A rate can exist digitally without the physical or digital liquidity pool being unlocked for retail exchange. Investment. In other words, the system can show 486 while the vault door is still closed. That's not manipulation. That's process control. Investment. And if you've been in this space long enough, you know this isn't about whether a rate can appear. It's about whether the money behind it has been allocated. Investment, let's talk about that allocation piece. When a currency moves significantly, especially if it moves upward, it affects reserves, cross-border settlements, oil contracts, trade balances, derivatives exposure, and sovereign debt calculations. That doesn't just flip overnight without coordinated timing. So when you hear or 4 investment, 86, don't immediately think jackpot, think sequence, because sequence is everything in global finance. Here's another example, investment. Let's say international settlement banks begin recalculating exchange ratios for large institutional contracts. They need a working rate before public release. Investment. That working rate might temporarily show up in internal systems. But until central banks synchronize clearing houses and correspondent banks, retail access stays paused. Investment. That's standard. Now, here's what I find fascinating, the silence. If nothing was happening, banks would dismiss it outright. They would say, that rate doesn't exist. End of story. But what we're hearing instead is more like, what, can't comment, or that's internal, or it's not available yet. Investment. Those are very different answers. Notice the wording, not available yet. That doesn't deny existence. It implies timing. Again, speculation. But informed speculation, investment. Let's zoom out. Why would a rate like 486 even matter in the first place? Because psychologically, investment, it represents a revaluation tier that would drastically change perception of value, not just for holders, but for international confidence. Investment. Currency strength isn't just math, it's messaging. When a nation signals financial reform, banking independence, or structural economic shifts, investment. Currency value becomes part of that narrative. Now imagine this. What if internal systems are preparing for a rate adjustment aligned with broader economic announcements? Investment. What if liquidity is staged to release simultaneously with regulatory triggers? That would explain screen sightings without cash availability. Investment, and that would also explain why some bankers appear nervous, vague, or restricted. Because here's something people forget. Investment. Bank employees sign non-disclosure agreements tied to system updates. If a test rate appears and they discuss it prematurely, that can be grounds for termination. Investment. So when someone tells you, my banker wouldn't say much but looks serious, that doesn't confirm anything, but it does suggest they're aware of sensitivity. Sensitivity means process. Let's address the elephant in the room. Could 486 be a placeholder? Absolutely. Investment. Banks use rounded projections and stress test numbers all the time. A projected appreciation model might temporarily load a figure like 4 to simulate impact on balance sheets. But here's the twist. Placeholders usually look clean. 4 ODRID, 5 ODRID, 350, 4A6 is oddly specific. Investment. Specific numbers often reflect algorithmic calculations rather than arbitrary placeholders. Does that mean it's final? No. But it means someone ran math. Investment. Now let's talk about liquidity corridors. When large rate shifts occur, international clearing banks coordinate swap lines and reserve buffers. Liquidity has to be available not just domestically, but internationally, so counterparties can settle trades. If liquidity isn't fully staged, investment, the rate can't go live publicly. That's why some insiders use the phrase, it's on the screen but not in the drawer, meaning visible but not spendable. Investment. Think about that. Have we seen situations historically where rates changed and retail was last to know?
Yes, many times.
Investment. Currency realignments often hit institutional desks before retail platforms update. Forex terminals adjust before local banks do. There can be hours, sometimes days, investment of internal only visibility, and during that window, rumors explode. That's the stage we might be in, or we might not. Again, no guarantees. But the pattern fits. Another scenario, imagine regulatory agencies require final compliance sign off before cash release. Anti-money laundering triggers, capital control adjustments, reporting mechanisms, all that has to be synchronized. If even one piece lags, the rate can sit frozen internally. So when someone asks if 486 is real, where's the cash? The answer could be staged but not triggered. And that's very different from doesn't exist. Let me speak directly to you for a second. Investment. If you've been holding for years, you've developed patience muscles most investors never build. You've seen rumors, spikes, crashes until waves silence faces. Investment. This feels different to many of you. Not louder, quieter, and sometimes quiet movement is the most meaningful. Investment. Because real financial transitions don't come with fireworks. They come with system updates at 2 a.m. Here's what you should watch, not as advice, but as awareness. Are banks updating compliance language? Are financial institutions increasing staff training quietly? Are there system maintenance windows that align globally? Investment. Are central banks releasing reform statements? Those indicators matter more than social media screenshots. But I will say this, investment, when multiple unrelated sources mention the same unusual number within a tight time frame, that gets my attention, not excitement. Attention. Investment, because coordinated rumor waves usually have one origin point, and origin points in banking aren't random. So is 486 real? The better question is it positioned? Investment. And if it's positioned, is liquidity aligned behind it? That's what we're watching. We're not chasing hype, we're observing process. Because if cash isn't available yet, investment. That doesn't mean it won't be. It means sequence hasn't completed, and sequence is everything. Now again, quick reminder, this is not financial advice. Investment. I am not giving dates. I am not giving rates. I am not telling you what to do with your money. This is analysis, speculation, pattern recognition, and scenario breakdown. Investment, you are responsible for your own decisions. Now we need to go deeper because the bigger question isn't just is the rate visible? The bigger question is investment. Why would banks stay quiet if nothing is happening? Let's think logically. If someone walks into a bank and says, I heard there's a 4. Investment 86 rate showing the simplest response if it's completely false would be that's not accurate, clean, direct. Done. Investment. But what some people are reporting instead is hesitation, vague language. Investment. We can't access that. We don't have authorization. We've been told not to discuss internal rates. That wording matters. Banks are extremely precise with language. Investment, they train employees on phrasing for legal protection. If something is totally fabricated, they shut it down quickly to avoid misinformation liability. Investment, but when wording shifts toward restriction rather than denial, that signals internal awareness, not confirmation. Awareness, investment. And awareness means there's at least a conversation happening somewhere above the teller level. Now let's talk about what banks actually control and what they don't. Investment. Local branches do not control currency rate releases. Regional managers don't either. investment, even national corporate banking divisions don't independently trigger a currency revaluation. Those decisions sit at central bank and international settlement levels, investment. So if you're expecting your neighborhood banker to have the master switch, that's not how this works. But here's where it gets interesting. When central banking systems prepare for rate changes, they often send encrypted data packets ahead of time to update recognition systems. That means currency codes, rate placeholders, cross-border compatibility structures, all of that has to be preloaded. If not, the moment a rate goes live, systems crash. Investment. No major financial authority wants chaos, so they prepare quietly, and when preparation happens, internal visibility increases before public execution. Investment. Now let's explore a realistic scenario. Let's say a central bank has approved a new valuation framework, investment, but the Global Coordination Committee has set a synchronized release window. Until that window opens, internal systems show the number but block execution. In that case, investment, what would banks say? They would say exactly what many of you are hearing. It's not available yet because from their access level, it's not. They may see it, investment. They may not transact it. Now here's another layer most people don't consider. Liquidity distribution is not uniform. Even if funds are allocated for exchange, investment, they're often staged in tiers. Institutional settlement first, government clearing second, large commercial banks third, retail branches last, investment. That means even if the rate is technically active somewhere, your local branch might not have received liquidity allocation yet. Imagine a pipeline system. Investment. The water pressure exists at the source, but it hasn't reached every faucet. That doesn't mean there's no water. It means flow timing matters. Investment. Now I want you to think about something. Why 486? Why not 390? Why not 5? Don't do it. Oddly specific numbers usually come from formula recalculations tied to reserves, investment, GDP adjustments, oil, backed asset modeling, or debt restructuring ratios. They're not random emotional numbers. They're outputs. Outputs come from inputs. Investment, which means if that number truly appeared in any internal system, someone ran economic models to generate it. Now, is it final? Unknown. Is it a testing tier? Possibly. Investment. Is it a transitional rate before a managed float? That's another possibility. And here's something very important. Banks do not like surprises. Investment, they prefer gradual implementation. Even when a rate changes dramatically, the back-end preparation takes months. Compliance, reporting, international notifications. Investment, settlement synchronization. So if we are seeing hints of internal movement, that suggests back-end work has been happening long before social media caught wind of it. Investment, let's shift to something else. Silence from top-level officials. When major economic changes are imminent, public messaging often becomes neutral, very neutral. Investment, you'll notice fewer bold denials and more vague reform talk. Why? Because officials don't want to trigger speculation before structural completion. So messaging softens. Investment, and right now across financial sectors globally, we're seeing a lot of monitoring, reviewing, aligning frameworks, modernizing systems. That language is preparation language, it's not hype language. Now, I want to address the emotional side of this. When you hear 486, investment, your brain immediately starts calculating. You imagine exchange totals. You imagine life changes. That's natural, but here's the discipline part. Investment. Until liquidity is publicly accessible, it's just positioning. Positioning is powerful, but it's not execution. Execution is when the button works. Investment. And if we're in a positioning phase, that's actually significant because positioning means systems believe something is coming. Banks do not load rate data randomly. Investment. Every adjustment creates audit trails. Every data push is logged. So if multiple systems show a similar number, that indicates coordinated data flow. Now let's consider a counterpoint.
Could this be misinformation? Yes.
Could someone have misread a Forex cross rate?
Yes.
Investment. Could internal sandbox environments generate strange outputs? Absolutely. We have to stay balanced. But here's what keeps this conversation alive. Consistency. Investment. When unrelated reports echo similar numbers within a short window, that reduces the probability of coincidence. It doesn't confirm reality. It increases curiosity. Investment. Now let's talk about cash specifically. Even if liquidity is staged, physical cash is rarely the limiting factor in modern banking. Investment, digital settlement dominates global finance. So when someone says, is the cash really available? What they usually mean is, can I walk in and complete an exchange? That depends on authorization layers. Layer 1, central bank release. Layer 2, correspondent bank clearance. Layer 3, compliance activation. Layer 4, investment. Retail branch enablement. If any layer pauses, retail sees nothing. But internal screens might still show prepared data, and that's the gray zone we're talking about. Investment. Prepared, not activated. Here's another scenario to consider. What if the rate is visible internally because institutional exchanges are being processed first? Investment. Large sovereign or corporate settlements sometimes occur before retail access. That ensures major obligations settle at the new value before public demand spikes. Investment. If that's happening, retail delay would make sense. And banks would absolutely stay quiet until that phase completes, because early disclosure could create bank runs. Investment, speculation waves, and unnecessary pressure. Banks hate pressure, they love control. So what aren't they saying? They're not saying nothing. Investment. They're also not saying go ahead. They're sitting in that uncomfortable middle ground, and that middle ground is where transitions usually live. Investment. Let me speak directly to you again. If you're watching this and thinking, Stephen, are you saying it's about to happen? No. Investment. I'm saying structural indicators suggest preparation behavior. Preparation behavior precedes activation, sometimes by days, sometimes by months. Investment. But behavior always changes before execution, and right now behavior feels different. Not loud, coordinated, measured, restrained. Investment. That restraint is what I'm paying attention to. All right, guys.